The image you're seeing on your screen is from NBC in the Bay Area. A federal officer was shot and killed during the riots. The police don't know if the men who did this are connected to the riots, but they think that organized groups are using this as cover to commit acts like this. I'm going to go ahead and say that we are well beyond a riot. I mean, we've been way beyond protest for a long time, and we are entering what looks like the beginning stages of armed insurrection. The image you're seeing on your screen is a white van that pulled up, slid the door open, and executed a federal officer. Throughout this country, we are seeing, aside from the most egregious, people fighting each other. A man, I believe it was in Portland, was just standing still, waving an American flag when an Antifa-type individual punched him in the face, grabbed him, and dragged him into the crowd where he was stomped. Another man tried to stop the violence, so they chased him down, knocked him to the ground, knocked him out, and punted his head, and teeth went flying from his mouth. That guy didn't even know it hit him. This is not about riots. It's not about George Floyd. It's just people have gone completely insane. I'm seeing some of my friends, they're just incapable of understanding what's happening around them. I'm seeing friends of mine, your traditional liberal types, they don't read the news. They don't watch the news. So the only thing they see is the propaganda poured down their throats. If they knew what this was, maybe they would have a different view of this. But right now, what's shocking to me is that I have some friends who are relatively high profile lefties, and they have gone hardcore into the fringe cultist left. And it's shocking to me. It's shocking to me because of this. I mean, why would you put out a call to action and tell people to come down to provide cover for this? Why would you encourage people to come down when it results in rioting that destroys the businesses in the black communities? Killer Mike, this guy did this impassioned plea. He's going viral saying no violence, right? He just came out with a tweet saying you're destroying our communities. We got another rapper, I think his name is Dream, I'm not sure, saying why are you coming to the black communities and burning everything down? It's a good question. I don't think this is going to result in anything other than, I think there's two parent possibilities, two big paths we could take. In between them, probably lots of variables, but I think either this simmers down, it reaches a tipping point, and then come Monday, the rage has subsided. Maybe, I don't know. I think we got a lot of pent up rage for a lot of reasons, but this might just cause the complete and total collapse. I don't know. You want to call it a boogaloo? I don't know what you want to call it. I'm looking at Twitter, and what do I see? Celebrities, leftists, left-wing pundits. Every single video is about the police. The police did this. The police did that. They're showing the police attacking people, the police throwing things. And yeah, these videos are bad. And it's shocking. What are these cops doing? It's like they want the riots to get worse, or they just don't care. On the right, you tend to see more focus on business owners and regular Americans, people defending their property, for instance. Several videos show a man defending his store with what looks like what apparently was a sword, and he gets just stomped nearly to death. Everybody thought he was dead. I started thinking about this. You can really tell what someone cares about based on what they're posting about. It's no surprise to me that urban liberals are only posting about cops. Many of them don't own businesses. Many of them don't even have jobs. Conservatives probably do own, in the rural areas, they do own businesses. They do work for small business. And so to them, it's shocking to see someone's livelihood be destroyed by an angry mob. These people who are in these, big urban centers who don't care, They don't know what it's like to build something and rely on something. To them, it's just one big system, and they think they're owed something. To the conservatives, their focus tends to be the little guy. What's interesting about this phenomenon that we're seeing throughout the country is that conservatives right now absolutely recognize the brutality of the police, of the death of George Floyd. And what makes us truly fascinating is that we have an instance where 99% of the entirety of institutions, factions, organizations were in agreement that the death of George Floyd was unjust. And the guy got fired immediately, which is a change from how things used to operate. Then rioting breaks out, and then eventually this guy gets arrested. Now, the protesters argue that, they're mad about other things. They want more arrests. It'll never be enough. It will never be enough because this is not about George Floyd. And anyone who tells you that is lying. The catalyst isn't the powder keg. And it's sad that that man lost his life. And I think, this cop who did this is one of the worst of the worst. This is not about George Floyd. It's about factional violence and whatever this is. The other day on my main channel over at timcast.net, maybe you saw the video, I talked about how this is staged. Now, you've got desperate attempts from the government in Minnesota trying to claim that it's white supremacy groups or whatever, and it's just not true. They also tried claiming that the protesters came from out of state. This is a correction on my past video. I think it's fair to call it an update because new information came out. The statements from government officials are in question when journalists looked at the arrest records through a local Hennepin County Police Department and found that the majority are from in-state. However, I like to point out to people, do we have ask this, do we have a total arrest count from the state, from the city? And if someone came in from out of state and was arrested, would they then ship them to an out-of-county or different jail? So looking up one jail number, in my opinion, isn't enough to determine whether or not they're telling the truth, but it is important to bring up. They're trying to act like it's not Antifa, but it is. And so I look at, going back to that point I was making, I look at who's posting about all this. We see the left saying, look at all the cops. We see the right, look at these rioters are destroying everything. And the funny thing is, you can really tell what they care about based on who they're tweeting about, right? The journalists are just tweeting about journalists. Isn't that funny? For almost every journalist, not all of them, the story has become them and their oppression and the police violating the First Amendment or whatever you want to call it. Let me tell y'all something. You're not special, journalists. You're not. You're another human being standing in a crowd, and they don't care who you are or what you're doing. Not only that, but activists also put on press badges and pretend to be journalists and medics and other things as cover, taking advantage of your profession. If I have seen legal, legitimate protests where the cops show up and shut it down and fire into the crowd, and that's a violation of the First Amendment. And then these journalists ignore the orders, thinking that when the police are violating the First Amendment rights of these protesters, the police are choosing to exempt them. They're not. And these journalists end up getting shot and then shocked, like, oh no, why are they firing beanbags at me? I'm a noble journalist. No, you're not. Now, right now we're dealing with riots, and that's a bit more understandable because the rioting is not First Amendment. So these journalists who are under 1A, legally allowed to be filming and documenting, and should be, don't realize that when a riot breaks out, everyone goes. Don't know who you are, don't care who you are. And it's fascinating to me. These journalists just don't get it. They think they're magic. They think they're invincible. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have well crossed into the territory of boogaloo, or whatever you want to call it. Some people told me the boogaloo is the people versus the government, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, maybe. I don't know much about what that word is supposed to imply. But what I will tell you is that I've been saying for a long time, civil war. For the past couple of years, I've talked about the escalation and about what comes next, because people are seeing all of this and it's not simmering down. Social media allows us to stay fresh in your mind. And now we have two diverging factions. I see my friend posting, saying things like it's on all white people. You got to do this. What do I even say to this person? Like, they've gone down a crazy path. We're not talking about white supremacy versus noble resistance. We're talking about regular Americans versus psychotic domestic terrorism, or whatever you want to call it. Armed insurrection, far left communist revolutionaries. In the video, I may have missed this point, but the point I was making in my video yesterday, there were bricks preset in front of a courthouse. Now, a lot of people don't know who did it or why. Some people think the police are staging these things. Listen, man, I have been to these activist meetings. I see what they do. They talk about how they'll load up vans with materials and bring them in early in the morning and strategically place them. Why? Because you can't drive a van full of bricks into a riot to hand out bricks. So what they do is they come with a van at 2 a.m. and they wear vests and hard hats and they stack bricks and they put up a sign and it looks totally normal. They drive away. Then 12 hours later, people show up to protest and, well, lo and behold, a stack of bricks, and they grab them and use them. It is strategic. It is clever. The reason I think that we're entering civil war territory is these next clips I'm going to show you. I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube took this video down, but what are you going to do, YouTube? This stuff is happening all around us. Let me tell you what we are seeing is something I have not seen in my entire life. I'm going to start you off light. Check out this clip. Man attacked by mob of rioters in South Carolina over MAGA hat. Police officer shot at. It's from the District Herald. And the officer was not hit and did not fire back. And that's the gist of the story. I got to be careful about the videos and the clips that I show in this segment because I don't want the video to get deleted. I want you to be able to hear what I have to say and hear what's going on. That was it. It was just a guy in a MAGA hat. Oh yeah, they want to kill you, bro. They want to kill you. So what do you think people are going to do? I got video. I'm going to show you what people are going to do. Well, carefully, I might add. But let's move on. Take a look at this story. Man in Gainesville arrested after trying to drive through a crowd of protesters, threatening them with a gun. I don't know why, it was a small crowd of protesters. When he couldn't get through, witnesses say he pulled out a gun and started waving it. You want to know why he did that? Because in the LA riots, there was a man who was pulled from a vehicle and beaten to death. Because there was a man who was in front of his store who was beaten to death. Because there was a vehicle, I think this may have been in Chicago, that was just shot up, riddled with bullets. Because there was an officer who was standing in front of a building and a white van pulled up, opened the side panel door and killed one of them. And because NYPD in an SUV were sitting in their vehicle when it got pelted with Molotov cocktails. No one is going to just sit there anymore and let you do your thing. You think you're a protest. When a van pulls up to a federal building and takes aim at an officer, you're not a protester anymore. You are standing out there waving your little sign, but you are providing cover to armed insurrection. I am absolutely in favor of 1A. So the point I'm trying to make is not that you're not actually protesting. That's not the point. Yes, you have a right to do so, and you can and should. But what you have to keep in mind is that other people who have seen everything else happen will not gamble on whether or not you are just there to mind your own business. They're going to see these images, they're going to see these stories, and they're going to say, I'm not gambling on my life. Somebody posted online, I'll take my chances with a jury over an angry mob. And so you'll see this. In New York City, a video is going viral of an NYPD SUV stopped by a bunch of protesters and then just jolting forward and slamming and knocking them all down. Another SUV peels through. New York, I've never seen it like this. This is mind-blowing to me. I've been covering this stuff for almost 10 years. And New York was always the tamest. The worst thing I saw in New York, running through the streets. The absolute worst thing in terms of police violence was a guy got his a cop grabbed his head and slammed him into a door, spiderwebbing the glass. It was a glass window. I see people thrown on the ground and stuff, but that was the worst. Now what are we seeing? It's an SUV just, jerking forward, knocking a bunch of protesters down. It's not going to end here. Let me show you some stuff, man. Protesters take on driver aiming bow and arrow at them in Salt Lake City. I can't show you the videos, man. You got to look these things up. You can find them very easily. This man right here, you can see him a little bit, got out of his vehicle when there were protesters all over the street, and he took a bow, it looks like a compound bow, and started drawing and aiming at people. So they rushed up and they beat this man mercilessly, and they burned his car. They torched it in the street. I believe that's what happened. That's what I've seen. But it's hard to confirm a lot of this. You got to understand. Man, I'm not even done. Here's a message from Killer Mike. I want to show you this in a second, but I want to make sure I can go through the crazy things. This is from Andy No. This guy right here in the hat is just standing there with an American flag. This guy walks up to him, punches him, and drags him into a crowd where he is stomped mercilessly. Which brings me to the next video. Oh, not this one, sorry. Actually, it doesn't look like, I guess I don't have it pulled up. Well, it's probably better that I don't show it anyway. It's a guy who I mentioned earlier on. He was trying to defend this. I'm told he was trying to defend this guy because they were hitting on him. They said some things I can't repeat. They used homophobic slurs. They made racial statements about who he was, overtly racist statements. I'm talking about Black Lives Matter activists. These are black people saying this, using homophobic slurs at this guy. And I wonder if the guy who got stomped was actually gay, because I'm not going to make assumptions about the guy, but they were calling him these slurs. So I wonder what that had to do with it. And one woman said, "You're lucky that we're helping you because you've all been so terrible to us," or something like that. I'm like, what? She was talking about white people. Yeah. And this guy's sitting there covered in blood with his teeth knocked out. Why? Because this guy was minding his own business. I got respect if you want to go out and protest. All right. So if this guy wants to show up and wave his American flag, and the other guy, He wants to show up and watch what's happening. I can respect, that you're protesting and expressing your rights. But you got to understand what's happening in these streets and what's been happening for the past year. Don't be surprised when they drag you into a crowd and just start beating you mercilessly. In this video, a man was critically injured. He was apparently trying to defend his store, had like a sword or something, was screaming. The video's crazy. And they beat him with a skateboard, stoned him, and he's slumped over, and it looks like a Family Guy sketch. The guy's body all mangled up. I believe he may have survived, but I need to remind you, there's no such thing as being knocked out like it works in the movies. When you get knocked out, have you ever, you guys probably watch MMA, so you probably all know this. People who get knocked out get up in a few seconds. So you get knocked down, you fall down, and that's it. Fight over. This guy's down. And so when I saw this, I'm like, dude, that's got to be death or TBI, traumatic brain injury. Same is true for the guy in Portland. He falls down, gets knocked out, and someone full force punts his head. These guys are going to have permanent brain damage. They're going to probably have they'll have memory problems. They'll probably shake a little bit. They'll have vision problems, hearing problems. This stuff's permanent. What we're seeing from these people is attempted murder. I'm not exaggerating. You can argue the guy defending his business with the sword was nuts because he was running through the streets at people. Yeah. A guy in Minneapolis defended his store with lethal force. He shot a guy, a looter, and he got charged with murder, last I heard. Take a look at this video. This is from Elijah Schaefer, again. Police have lost control of downtown Dallas. Armed militia are now coming in to protect businesses. Yeah, that's what's happening. Take a look at this tweet from John Collins. People on Twitter might think Minneapolis people seem irrational right now, but I just got an invite to a gathering in the park hosted by a city council member for people to figure out how to protect our neighborhoods because government has failed completely. This is where we are. Yup. There's another clip I'm going to show you now. And I'm going to show you, it seems to me that we are inches away from full-on civil war. Now, I think before that happens, actually, I think the right is going to now defer to the National Guard, the military, and Trump. And you know what's going to happen is regular people probably will too. Take a look at this video. Store owner pulls up, sees looter, fires a shotgun, and chases them off. 2 shots. Some people have called them warning shots because in the first one, it looks like his gun is pointed upwards and to the left. So he walks up and goes bang. I'm not sure. You can't really see. He just walks into this building with a shotgun. What do you think's going to happen, man? I said it last year. I said it the year before. Every time this stuff happens, what do you think comes next? Let me tell you what comes next. As these videos keep circulating, there's a possibility that people calm down and the National Guard is deployed, I think now in like 10 states or more. The military is on standby. It's possible these people show up. There's a video going viral of what claims to be National Guard marching down what looks like a residential side street, firing at people standing on their porch for not going inside. This is my fear. This is going to escalate. We are going to see the total and complete militarization of our streets, and a lot of people are going to beg for it. I mean, this is a right, authoritarian, far right, wet dream, whatever you want to call it. All of these people who have wanted some kind of authoritarian lockdown from the militarized, police force and government, they're getting their wish. The funny thing is, the conservatives that were out protesting didn't want it. They were mad when the cops wouldn't let them go to the supermarket. So where does that leave us? Civil war of some sort? I don't know. People versus government? I don't know. I think based on the ideological nonsense that I've seen, I think it's going to come to factional. And I think conservatives will find themselves ultimately on the side of the government because the government provides order and stability. People randomly attacking small business and attacking black neighborhoods. I'll show you this Killer Mike thing. Here's what he said. He says, I am black. I was talking to blacks in my city. If you want to understand, then ask me. I can show you 3 black business owners who are trying to understand why their shops were destroyed and their black employees are now jobless. Giving every excuse to the government, the military, the National Guard, whatever, to occupy our streets. If you thought the COVID lockdown was bad, wait until you see martial law It's going to be 10 times worse, 100 times worse. In a lot of ways, though, because I think when martial law hits, you're actually going to be able to go golfing, not like under COVID. Combine the two, however, you're not going to want to live this way. These people don't know what they're doing. They think they're going to be some armed insurrection. They're not. That's not it. It is looking like it, but when I see my friends posting these things, supporting all of this, they're just not watching the news, man. They have no idea what's happening. So here's a small collection of stories. It's kind of weird. This is going to be it for like the next several days. It's Saturday, right? Or no, today's Sunday. I'm sorry. We'll see how this plays out. Today might not be as bad. Based on my experience dealing with protests and riots, Sundays start to calm down. But with 40 million people unemployed, why would anyone stop? What do you think is going to happen? Did you take care of yourself, your friends, and your family? I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m., and I'll see you all shortly.